So this is a big week. There are a lot of shifts, but the moon is waning. A lot of new things will be introduced, but this is a time where we're wrapping up the old. And there's a lot of Mars stuff this week. A lot of aspects with Mars, and then Mars moves into Aries, which is much more harsh than it has been in Pisces. It's been very covert. Since the eclipse, I've been thinking of this Louise Hay video that has got me through a lot in the past. It's called Don't Scare Yourself. I'll link it in the link thing. It's called Don't Scare Yourself, Louise Hay. And I was thinking, how about, I was saying this to myself, how about you just live your life as if you cannot fail? It's the third quarter moon, so we're winding down. The moon is losing light, and it has the least amount of light in this quarter. What can you let go of? And that's a big theme given that the lunar eclipse the full moon was a lunar eclipse on the South Node in Scorpio, May 22nd. Mars sextiles Pluto. And this is like an introduction to a lot of Mars over the coming days. You can connect with Mars connecting with Pluto to some great potential, or an ability to accomplish a lot. You can tap into your fearlessness with Mars sextile Pluto. It's an easy aspect, and it's not necessarily going to flow automatically, but if you know it's coming and there's something you need to get done that's a little bit gut-wrenching, maybe this is the time to do it. Empowering and cathartic. And with the moon waning and Mars in Pisces connecting to Pluto in Capricorn, it could be sort of like that. It's pretty subtle, but there could be something of you're compelled to do something. Pluto compels in a way that makes things not that apparent that that's happening. So you could be compelling others to act or make choices or believe things, and you could be not totally aware that you're even compelling them to make that decision, or the other way around. There's definitely a subterfuge signature with both Mars and Pisces and just Pluto anywhere. So Mars connecting to Pluto, there's a sense of covert operations, connecting to ways that you've been manipulated or had your actions curtailed. There's a lot of that this week, connections with Pluto and connecting with past ways that we have been Plutoed or we have Plutoed others. We've been manipulated or others have manipulated us, or the ways that past traumas have informed our decision-making or beliefs. But I think with Mars connecting to Pluto, there's a line it's a 90s drag queen movie called Tu Wong Fu, where the more experienced drag queens are teaching the younger one how to rise within the ranks, and they tell her to ignore adversity. You could just power through. So May 22nd is a big day. Also on May 22nd, Mercury enters Taurus again. So the last time Mercury was in the degrees of Taurus that it's about to go through again was April 25th through 29th. So things decided late night, April 25th / early April 26th through April 29th, those could be subject to reassessment. And also the moon is squaring Mercury retrograde. It might feel extra hung up or delayed or in need of reassessment. Mercury stations direct on June 3rd at the place that it was late night / early morning, April 25th, April 26th. And so Mercury is in the last 10 degrees of Taurus a lot. There's a signature of scenario planning for contingency, making sure you have enough supplies, making sure you have a backup plan, working out all the things that could go wrong and what you might do in those situations. If you use an agricultural metaphor, like all the stuff you've grown, there are so many possibilities when you're growing food. Like you could have a plague of locusts come and eat everything, and then everything that you carefully tended, you can't even use. So preventing stuff like that from happening is very like the third face of Taurus. And especially with Mercury there, you're like thinking about it and engaging with your skill around stuff like that. The book The Celestine Prophecy, which is like a 90s new age book that was very hyped and then very derided because it was so hyped, but it's actually a really good book. There's a part where they're talking about how to use your intuition. And one of the characters is like, but what about all the fear thoughts that I have? Because I definitely am very good at thinking of the worst case scenario all the time to like a point where it can become like debilitating. So I found this conversation in this book helpful. One character was like, so what happens to all the fear thoughts I have? And they were like, so for the first while, when you learn to use your intuition, every time you have a fear thought, will a positive thought into existence. After a while, your fear thoughts will subside. Then, when you have one, you can take it seriously. After like a long while of working out the muscle of every time you're afraid of something or you think of like some doomsday scenario, will in a positive scenario in its place. When you get good at that, the overdeveloped amygdala, reptile brain, will like, stop overreacting. Then, if you have a fear thought, if you like, say you have like a weird imaginative thing pop into your head of like you get into an accident in a truck and then somebody offers you a ride in a truck, don't take the ride. Also on May 22nd, so much on May 22nd, the sun sextiles Jupiter. So this could help with what I was speaking about with Mercury moving back into Taurus. I mean, the sun is in Gemini connecting with Jupiter in Aries. So like Jupiter, like Aries, there's like a very independent streak with Aries, and Jupiter enables that in a positive way. And the sun is in Gemini. So it's like all of our multiple personalities can have sovereignty. Jupiter is particularly helpful in this early part of Aries because it's in the bounds of Jupiter, much more helpful than when it moves out of the bounds of Jupiter, June 16th. But the sun sextile Jupiter is a very uplifting and empowering, since it's Jupiter in a Mars ruled sign, signature. Also, with the sun sextile Jupiter, that might feel particularly nice because the sun has been in Taurus for so long. So the sun is in very early Gemini. The sun entered Gemini May 20th, late in the day. And this is just May 22nd. So for a vibe shift, there were eclipses. So it could feel like particularly nice to have the sun off of all that for a minute in Gemini, connecting to Jupiter. But also it's the sun in Gemini and Mercury's retrograde, in Taurus. So glitchy, like things could be reassessed, but it might feel good temporarily. So on May 23rd, Mercury sextiles Mars, and it's like, drawing out, like strategizing on a whiteboard in the locker room, or the map in the throne room, the like giant miniature of the entire kingdom, like planning your moves before you actually enter the theater of battle when Mars enters Aries. So you're kind of like getting prepared for the next 6 weeks, but Mercury is retrograde, so things will be reassessed. No matter how good your plans are, things are going to get weird and you're going to get curveballs, and sometimes unexpected stuff is going to happen. Not that it necessarily will, but with Mercury retrograde sextiling Mars direct, you can plan as much as you want, but Mars in Aries is like the game face, lives in the moment, is not necessarily subject to all the planning. So it might even be like you make those plans and then like you don't even want to do them the day of battle arrives. So also on the 23rd, Venus sextiles Saturn. I just think enjoy responsibly. So there's an opportunity for like some type of enjoyment or beauty or, like creation of concrete beauty or love under difficult circumstances, and also sacrifices that you have to make for like the good of the collective could inhibit your pleasure. I mean, it's a sextile, so like it might enhance it somehow. It might like make it more fulfilling over time, or some sort of like situation regarding loyalty could pay off. Some sort of situation involving loyalty could either won't necessarily pay off right now, or some sort of like long-term situation does pay off now, like some sort of situation you have a history with somehow comes to fruition right now. But Venus in Aries is like magnetism and like the heat of the moment, and Mars in Aquarius is very like, wants to think about structures and what best for the greater good. They're interesting. They don't necessarily like not go together, because there's something about like the magnetism and enthusiasm and drive of Venus, even though she's in detriment in Aries, connecting with like what Saturn wants to do in regards to making new rules or dividing people. Also, back to Mars connecting, or Mercury connecting with Mars. That could be like bad news or shit talking. But back to Venus sextile Saturn. It's also could be a good time to like get organized. Getting organized. Venus sextile Saturn. So then on May 24th, Mars enters Aries. Buckle in. Mars has been in Pisces for a long time, so we're kind of used to this like undercurrent Mars, which could even be frustrating because it's like your actions aren't like direct action, kind of like ends up doing something else than what you wanted it to do. And then like indirect, you get where you need to go by indirect action. But Mars in Aries is like, okay, now we will forge our own way through all of reality, like physically altering the landscape. And that's going to be effective and confronting things and people that get in our way. And it's not so much of like Mars and Pisces sextile Pluto and Capricorn back on May 22nd, where it's like ignore adversity, just power through. This is like get in adversity's face for the next 6 weeks. That's what it's going to be like. Also on May 24th, so we have the moon conjoining Neptune and then conjoining Mars in Pisces on May 24th. A last goodbye to this, like all this Neptune and Pisces stuff. The moon is like shining a light on that. And so the moon conjoins Mars in Pisces, and then Mars moves into Aries. And then the moon conjoins Jupiter in Aries. So we get like a highlight of like, you're supported in your campaign, whatever it is. But here with Mars in Aries for the next 6 weeks, we're rolling up our sleeves. I think of like elbow grease. Enjoy responsibly. I'm kidding. That's like not like the keywords for that, but I was thinking like Mars in Aries, whatever's in your way, you're going to blast through it. And you might need to be careful. Aries can be rather inconsiderate in getting its way. And that's a good quality sometimes. Like we need that. Some people struggle with it. It's a much more harsh Mars than we've been dealing with for the past 6 weeks with Mars in Pisces, with all the benefics. With Mars in Aries, you might find that conditions are more hostile, or you're just more effective at confronting the hostility head on. There will be hostility. On May 25th, the next day, Mercury trines Pluto. So we have another connection with Pluto, the like covert power structures, covert, deeply wrought power structures crumbling. The king is dead. There's something on Niccolo Machiavelli's tomb, I'm paraphrasing, when you're trying to introduce a whole new situation or like trying to introduce a whole new base reality, that is very difficult and dangerous. This is Mercury retrograde connecting to Pluto, so knowledge is power, but also perhaps you discover some irrational loophole, or perhaps you have bad information. And it could connect, like Mercury trining Pluto, it's a trine, and Pluto's in the superior position, so maybe there's maybe you're being manipulated. Maybe you've got that bad information. It's a trine, so, what's happening is more likely to be useful, but that's one way that it could be not useful since Mercury is retrograde. There's also persuasion that borders on corruption with Mercury retrograde trining Pluto. Again, it's a trine, so it could be helpful in The Hobbit. Smaug, the dragon, is missing one scale, and somebody knows about that. And they shoot an arrow into that one tiny scale that is missing, and that's how they take down the dragon. So you could also, maybe you have a dream of which scale is missing. That would be Mercury retrograde instructions in dreams. Being able to, having the skill to interpret your dreams is more of a Mercury retrograde thing. And that requires a different way of thinking. This is dream information. Maybe the dream information comes from something dredged up from your deep subconscious that is about some way that you were manipulated. On May 26th, Venus squares Pluto. So we're carrying this theme again, except it's Venus connecting to it, and it's a square, so they're butting heads, and it's not necessarily all that productive. And it's a busy day for the moon too, where the moon conjoins Venus on that day, and the moon squares Pluto on that day, before Venus makes the exact square to Pluto. This aspect will be pretty hot in the skies. In reality, there's a Shakespeare line, rough winds do shake the darling buds of May. These are the rough winds. Even though it's not really air sign energy, it could be pretty rough. Being manipulated, or perhaps even though it doesn't feel good, you connect to some way that you are being manipulated in the present, and that's connected to some way you were manipulated in the past. Maybe Venus wants to be outgoing and be seen. Pluto tries to stop that, but in a sneaky way. With Pluto, the power struggle is often unconscious, but it could also be a powerful creative signature. So if you get in your workshop, this might be a good time for that. Nothing happens on the 27th. The moon's not doing anything. There are no aspects between other planets. If you want to Netflix and chill uninterrupted, the 27th, nothing. And then the moon moves into Taurus, though, on the 27th with Mercury. So that's an interesting, laying the scene for when Venus moves into Taurus, where Venus is dignified again. So Venus has been the winter, we had kind of rough territory for Venus, or complicated. And then we had Venus in Pisces, where it's exalted, where everything was just sort of overflowing. So yeah, Venus is dignified again. We're all going to want to be hanging out at the buffet instead of rising and grinding or whatever, unless we're grinding in the dance way against each other, because that's very Venus in Taurus. There's this ridiculous thing, I don't think people do it anymore, this really ridiculous thing that happened in the early 2000s, where they would have a party and they would have a naked woman on a table and they would cover her with sushi. It was a model, I mean, whatever, to each his own, or her own, to each their own. Venus in Taurus makes you think of that. Where you're eating sushi off of a live model. Venus in Taurus is very physical, physical pleasures. It's not you necessarily want to toil in the fields right now. You'd rather benefit from the other people's work, having luxuries brought to you, whatever comes or doesn't come your way, just cultivating gratitude for what you have. On May 28th, Mars conjoins Jupiter. This could be Mars to excess, Mars off the rails. Whatever Mars thing you want to do, you're just turning the blowtorch way up. Mars connecting to Jupiter is the Crusader, or Joan of Arc. She got a message from God to do this war, and then she did it, and she won until she went too far and she lost. So there's also that. But Mars in Aries, again, is like much more harsh than Mars in Pisces. But Jupiter does something to make the metal guitars of Mars in Aries feel more uplifting and empowering. So different from if Jupiter was not there. There's like positivity and confidence given to whatever Mars needs to do, whatever conflicts need to be met head on. It could also be like conflict with a spiritual teacher or of any teacher, like with Jupiter. Maybe you butt heads with a teacher. And also for more on Jupiter and Aries, you could see my previous video, which is like 2 videos ago, the one about eclipses. The timestamp is 16 minutes and 40 seconds when I talk about Jupiter and Aries. Independence, self-reliance, Mars in Aries, conjunct Jupiter in Aries. It's pretty exciting. So that'll be ramping up all week also. On the 30th, we have the dark moon in Gemini. This will take us out of eclipse season officially. We'll get to like approach the newness in our lives, the things that we're beginning. So I'll talk about the dark moon in Gemini in the next video. Also, during the next period, the first quarter moon, the dark moon through the first quarter moon, Mercury stations direct and Saturn stations retrograde.